Yeah, a long way from a stuttering kid. I didn't get it.
All right. Welcome to the How Men Cry podcast. I go by the name of Dxtr Spits. The How Men Cry campaign and mission is just aimed at getting 1,000 men to talk about vulnerability and mental health. And I'm here today with the good homie,
Dan Minea. Hey, everybody.
Yeah. And I don't tell people that I'm going to do that. So I just wait to see if they look at me awkwardly or if they actually say their name. So you got it.
Tracking.
But yeah, man. So we'll get into it. How was boxing for you today, man?
It was sweet. I'm ready for some more.
Yeah.
It was great. I was soaked though.
Yeah.
Like straight up soaked. I was like not expecting that after just a little bit of movement, just exhausted, but like mentally engaged. It was a lot of fun. It was, we started off just dancing. You didn't tell me it was dancing together.
That basically is what it is though. Like it's like a bunch of two steps. Mm-hmm. Kind of back to back, and then you kind of build on it. But yeah, I try to start footwork first, and then from there just add on steps. So, but yeah, you picked it up well, man. And I always tell folk there's like this moment in between somebody throwing where you see the intention in their eye. I was like, you were letting off steam from meetings or work calls. Or,
intense always. That's just how it goes.
It's true. No, man. So how were you? Well, actually, why don't you give the folks at home a good intro to just who you are, a little bit more about what you do? Because you're a man of many talents, and I'm really inspired by the work that you do. So
thanks, man. Here in Chicago, Uptown, started a nonprofit here about 4 years ago. It's called Collective Chicago. Helps young guys experiencing homelessness get back on their feet. Holistic housing, accessibility, and people worth looking up to and working alongside to get back on your feet and feel better about who you are and what you're capable of. And that's the life mission and passion project that I get to do every day.
Yeah, which is awesome, man. And like I said, we've connected a bit, and just it's really meaningful work, and especially all throughout the city. But just in general, I think it's very difficult for individuals experiencing homelessness to just like even feel seen at all within the city of Chicago, or just individuals experiencing harder times to feel seen at all within the city. So yeah, it's nice to see that type of support and kind of have it built up. So yeah, appreciate that, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So we have to get the chef in here.
It's at chef quiz.
It's at the same part. I don't know if it'll pick it up. Whatever, we'll have to figure it out.
He just wants to be in here. He was asking earlier. It's like, how many people are going to be watching? Am I going to jump in here?
Here's the thing. We can get him in here. What is he doing?
He's doing dishes. He's quick to not leave them in the sink. He's got good habits that right now are, a little interruptive, but I love the habits, healthy habits.
Indeed. So no, man. Yeah. So I'm just going to kind of jump or dive right in.
Yeah.
How do you relate to the word vulnerability?
Now or growing up? Those are two very different answers.
I would like both of them. I would say growing up and now.
Yeah, I would say growing up, vulnerability wasn't a scary word. It was just not one that we would exhibit. Like that's just not a characteristic we were invited into.
Yeah.
No one, it's not always people saying like whether it's masculinity or vulnerability, whichever tension point it is, it's oftentimes not like what people told us it should look like. It was what people didn't talk about at all. So we didn't know how to do it. And the only thing we saw was what was around us, just in culture and movies and stuff. So it's like vulnerability. What does that look like? No clue.
Yeah.
But it's not something I want to partake in. Doesn't seem like any of the guys I'm looking at are doing it. So I was like, I wasn't really seeing the utility of it. And I'm very like utility driven. So like, what is the function?
If there's no like practical or no practical use. And it's kind of like, and I'd say I had a pretty similar experience with that, I think, in most of my upbringing. Or if anything, I'm not even sure if I really knew the word growing up, probably not. But and it's not necessarily like I'm throwing it around all the time. Well, nowadays, yes, I am throwing this word around all the time. but so how about now then? If you fast forward into today, what does that word mean for you?
Gosh, I think it's synonymous with what I used to understand and kind of has been redefined as the word strength. Like vulnerability, it takes bravery and strength. And those are the first two words that I think come together when I hear it. And I know it makes me nervous. Like still exercising that muscle is just like, it's a hard thing to do, but I see ourselves as such hypocrites. Like, and it's a good thing that we're hypocrites because we see the vulnerability in someone else, whether it be another man or a woman or anyone going through anything, and they're just like vulnerable about it. Like you're not judging them, but like at the same time, you're just expecting to be judged, and you're so nervous and you're so worried. And like to get out of that headspace, oh man, you just fear the shame, you fear the judgment. And I'm a person that usually doesn't care a lot about what people think, but even I come subject to that, being like, well, can they look up to me still? Like I take a leadership position. It's that first knee-jerk reaction that like vulnerability is going to be, that thing that's actually going to inhibit my ability to lead. Whereas it's actually the complete opposite. That's where that strength is. And that's where you really immediately look up to people.
Yeah. Where do you think, so not even where do you think that feeling comes from? That'd be a question I'd like to know. Is like that feeling of just the fear around. Do you think that's more like upbringing? You think it's more social or combination? I
think it's a mixture of experience and expectation, whether rational or not. Like I think like vulnerability, there's been times like how many people most people have dated people and you're vulnerable. You put yourself out there and then like you try to see if it works and you feel like that's the very definition of vulnerable. And how does it end? Like it hurts like hell. It hurts like hell, dude. You're like, what do I want to do that again? Like seriously, it has reasons why you're like, I don't want to do that again. And for like I'll do it for the person I'm dating, but like if I don't even have to do that to somebody I'm dating, like I'm just gonna like hold off. Like who knows? They might be gone. They might use it. So there's like there's experience there around it. And sometimes some people don't respond. Like we can get into that later, but like depending on what you're going through in that hard time, if someone else hasn't gone through it, oftentimes people don't have the compassion when they haven't gone through the trial. And so depending on who you're vulnerable with, it could just be like, you can feel it in the room. It's like awkward. You're like, I shouldn't have said anything. Like I shouldn't. I can give you multiple examples, even recently. Where it's like, why did I even come to this person? What was I thinking?
You know what was funny is I felt that way even sometimes just talking about this project. Sometimes depending on the groups of guys that I'm in, where one of my good friends, he actually kind of pointed it out. He said, man, he's like, even when you say the title of this project, he's like, I still feel a little bit uncomfortable. He's like, every time. And I thought that was a really revealing thing to say. And of course we have a whole side conversation about it. But that was interesting to me. And like you said, even just I've definitely had that experience, whether it be dating wise or just, life wise, where it's like, maybe it's not the best idea. And I do think that there can be times and places, for maybe when it's more or less beneficial.
And I think the more life's happening, the less the timing seems like it makes sense. Like everybody's on their damn phones. Like, dude, I just went up a mountain with a bunch of leaders just a couple weeks ago. And there's something that happens when you go into a no Wi-Fi zone or you're like just hiking, backpacking. Like there's like this time limit. I've done it both on Kilimanjaro and then we did the Tetons last week. And it's like every week and a half, every like hour and a half, you hit, like you start that first hour and a half, everyone's like, they're hanging out for like, I've hung out with these people like the day before and we're getting to know each other. And I see people like getting food and talking a little bit, but it's usually one person to the other. And then if they are talking, it's short. Like everyone feels like you got to give the quick, thought synopsis, a little bit about your story, hear about them. And then it's kind of like, what do we do? And then like the phones come out. It's like, it's getting worse. It's like literally getting worse. So what's beautiful about being able to get outside, it's like after an hour and a half, like I got to time it next time I do it again. But like people are present and people are ready for the long stories. Like people are actually there to actually hear about your story. But I don't often feel like people are giving me the time or space or attention, or
To
even that they
go into
care,
it. Yeah.
you know, to even hear about what that is that makes you tick, or what it is that you're wrestling with.
Yeah. Well, and I would say, I feel like you provide that for a lot of individuals just from knowing you personally. I would say even in our first phone call, that was very much what our first phone call was, you know, was you were just kind of like, hey man, I heard about like this and that you're doing, like lay it on me. What's the journey? And I feel like, you know, we were able to share and kind of build a lot of that. And I think even from that first phone conversation, just taking that extra time, it more than likely, you know, solidified a relationship just in that quick moment. So
quick 1 hour, then another hour.
I'm saying
we get carried away, but it's good.
I'm like this quick 7-hour conversation where you end up going into childhood trauma and shit. Nah,
hey, we went there. We go there a little bit, you know.
Yeah. So I would say, how do you feel like that shows up in your work, and you know, like what kind of motivates you through your work? Just that ability to tap in to more of your vulnerable side, and even for that matter, being able to extend the ears for folks.
Yeah, I think it's out of that hardship and that trial, like going through, like personally for me, since teenage years, puberty hit, depression onset, seasonal depression, like it strikes in the weirdest ways, and it's different variables all the time. And even being in counseling, as long as you have like being attentive to it, like that's like one trial of many in my own experience that just like helps me understand loss or just loss of motivation. I've had loss of family, of friends that were practically family, like having to grow up really fast, like those kind of things that you get launched into or you experience gives you this kind of compassion.
Yeah.
And I think out of that dark space, you're kind of like, when you have depression, you're like, I don't know, at least not everyone, but for me, definitely I get like existential. I'm usually like big picture thinker anyway.
I'm in there.
You're just like,
I live in existential crisis.
That's right. So there we go. We're together. And like what that looks like for me is just like the question I keep asking is like, what's the fucking point? Like seriously, like what's the point of being here? I don't feel it. The way I look at the world is just sideways and sad. Yeah. And I have those moments where it's like it takes so much work to, you know, get it all together.
This is so hard for me to see this mirrored thing. For everybody listening, you're like, what the hell are they doing? There it is. Gosh. Dxtr Struggles. It's the name of my next
Dxtr Struggles.
It's the name of my next mixtape. For sure.
Yeah.
And still can't get it together.
No,
all right. I like it. All right. Just wanted to be more centered, and I feel like
you gotta go this way. It's tripping you out. No, shit. Okay, I think that's good.
Look at this.
Wow, we're doing it.
Continue. Interrupted. But no, yeah.
Compassion comes out of the heartbreak. Like the hurt healer is where asking the question, "What's the point?" I think where I see the biggest point is the compassion it creates when you see other people going through it, and it's that idea that we. Despite our individualistic culture and what everyone's trying to tell you, like you're responsible for your own healing, all this stuff. It's like, no, really, it's community that's always kept me together. It kept me from taking my life.
Yeah.
Like I knew how mad it would make people if I left. Like that was the only reason I stuck around. I didn't stick around for me.
Yeah.
And then they're the reason I'm still going. Yeah. Not because I'm sticking around for them anymore. I am there for others because I see I might make them stick around too. And then also see that there's more to life and that the beauty is found in that relationship.
I really resonate with just the fact of like even hanging around more or like finding that motivation within yourself. And then the fact that it kind of inspires you beyond for others. You know, I think it's just that much more important. And it gives a different meaning behind your own work to kind of show up for folks. And I fully agree. Like it gets easier when you've been in darker spaces to then say, okay, like, you know, I see where you're at. Maybe I don't feel it entirely like the same that you will, but you can empathize with it genuinely.
Yeah. So. It was said to me when I was doing my first marathon, I just moved here, came on with a nonprofit organization, was running with this guy who is now got like the largest nonprofit. He's on my board. We become good friends. Yeah. And he was saying like after he lost his two brothers and his dad, like in 1 year, just like the deepest suffering in he's the last living member of his family as of like this year, which is just crazy. Yeah. And so he carries this weight, you know, this loss. And what he funneled it into, again, nonprofit, he says there's like not a lot you can do about your own suffering, but there's a lot you can do about others. And I think I've never said it this way, and I haven't pushed back on him about this, but I think the way it's not just like, hey, since you can't help someone else or help yourself, help someone else. But if you don't receive help from others, then the cycle gets cut off.
Oh,
so like, I'm not there I'm not in this space, like trying to have vulnerable conversations and talking about why we're here and what matters and what we're capable of, and like instilling identity and possibility in these young guys going through all these different challenges. But like, I see them like when I'm going through it, and they're looking out for me and they're checking in with me, like Chris, you know, like he was checking in, he's like, you good every week? And I'm like, man, this dude just graduated like a month ago, and he's working 80 hours a week. He's checking in. I was like,
and he does the same for me. You know, he's he's a real good guy. And you're right. I mean, I love that reciprocal nature of it, and that like community healing aspect. And I think it's so crucial too, because of how isolating, I think, depressed states.
Oh, damn. Yeah.
You
like
know?
That's how we built our whole next space of the collective. Like, we got gifted this building, and like we could have just popped people in and like got it started, but like we spent 3 months designing and last 7 months building this space that's built to pull people out of isolation. Because like when we feel sad or shame, or we self-destruct because we don't think we're capable of it, and we get nervous, which inevitably happens. They don't know it, but it happens almost every time. It's like, the idea is you gotta cultivate a space that actually invites people in. Because like, if you left me alone in my room during depression with no one else around, no one checking in, like I won't come out.
I think that's what was also, that's one of the mental, and it kind of leads into some of the next line of question I was going to ask, but I think that's one of the things that I think has been so difficult to put your finger on around like COVID times in general, with this like quarantining. And I think there's so many folks who are probably more affected by that than even like who have, you know, awareness about it. Like, because I think it could have been a very isolating time. I know that it was for many, and some dealt with it fine, but I think for a lot, it was very isolating to be with your thoughts. And it's still, you know, kind of going on now. And if you weren't ready for it, man, I feel like that shit could hit like a ton of bricks, especially depending on what you were going through. Like me personally, I was in like a 1.5 year point at about my therapy, which is really kind of when you really start if you're doing it, you know, is when you really start to get into a lot of things, or at least that's how it was.
That's your pace.
Yeah, that was let me say, for my pace personally, I was going weekly at about that 1.5 year point. A lot of things started hitting, and that was right in connection with that like COVID time. So I guess what I'm really saying is, that the isolation is real. So I love that you're doing that with the space. So it kind of brings folks out to communicate like that. Or commune. So a question on that would be, how do you, I would say now, like today, manage or support your mental health, whether that's like physical ways, mental ways, tools, just curious.
I think the very way that like we built or are building a few years into the collective is the idea of the different dimensions of wellness. Like there's like 7, and I probably won't even name them off the top of my head, but really trying to build off like, what are the things that we know are good for us that we don't put in the work to go do, but we know we feel good after we do them. So like, I always called therapy like taking your brain to the gym. Like that's the way that we talk about it. It is an exercise. It takes work. It is exhausting afterwards. Some of those days, like I put it at the end of my day, even though I'm already tired at that point, but like I'm so dead by the end of that. Like it just, if you're really showing up, it'll wear you out. And that's a good thing. So on that end, that's kind of the emotional, intellectual inventory taken. Movement, we know trauma is held in the body. So you gotta be tuning in with yourself, figuring out not only describing how you're feeling or naming an emotion, but like knowing where it exists in your body. And so after I mean, in a lot of ways, I felt that even boxing, you know, like, oh, my wrist is actually starting to hurt now. Like it's not an emotion I'm feeling, but like even being able to tune in and get grounded is returning me to myself. Like I am in this moment. It is making me present. You have to be present or you're gonna get punched in the face. Well, so like I like that.
Yeah, it's funny you said that's actually one of my favorite parts. I made that realization. I got out of the ring sparring one time. And my partner at the time, she was sitting there, and I like hopped out the ring, and I was like, you know what? And this is after getting punched in the face. I was like, you know, this was like probably a little bit into therapy. I was like, you know what? I was like, this is one of the only times that I'm really, really here. And we just had a whole moment after that. But anyway, continue. But that was that. I've had moments like that where it's become very real how present it is. Just and running. I know you're a big runner too, so I'm sure that helps with it.
Yeah, when you finally get in shape, like most people feel like if running, no way, like I'm exhausted, I hate it. But like once you start showing up and putting in the miles, there's you kind of get in a rhythm after, you know, a handful of miles, and it's just a time to, you know, you can drown yourself out in all these activities. You can be listening to music, you can still not be there, you can just be mad about something. Like you could be in quarantine and just numb yourself out. I think most people just watch Netflix all day, and like that's the only thing they have to talk about to their friends, what they're watching. But like, who's gonna actually sit down? It takes actual work to like step aside, put that stuff away, and be quiet with yourself. Like, dude,
it's a ferocious. It was real, man. It still is. It still is. I'm still sitting with stuff.
Right, and so like that's just hard to want to do. You're like, who's gonna hold you accountable, or who are you gonna share about that you did that? Like, no one's proud that they just like did that and checked in. Yeah, but it's like it's so important. It's definitely not in our culture to be like, hey, I took this time to unplug, to spend time with my thoughts, to write some of it down. One of the things I definitely don't do as well is the journaling. I just too fidgety, maybe. I don't know. I'd actually rather let my mind race after a yoga workout and just be looking up at the ceiling. But yeah, so I'd say counseling, therapy, yoga. I picked that up when it's held in the body. Yoga was the best to focus on my breathing. I had never realized, like, most of the time I'm breathing, like, or I'm thinking or I'm moving, my tongue is like pasted to the top of my top roof of my mouth. And it's just like when you let that go and you drop it down and you relax your body, like you're right there. You're here. Yeah. And it's like, man, we're just going too much. Yeah. And we're going so fast. So that's an important time to like set that routine in the morning. It's just to get a little bit of movement. Nutrition too. I learned a lot from nutritionist, naturopathic doctor about like the gut microbiome and trying to figure out I didn't even know what a prebiotic was. So like the prebiotic, I was like, I don't really even know still what that is, but there's a very few foods you get that actually bring that version of the biotics to the gut so that it can be, because everybody's getting the kombucha and the probiotics and you hear that all the time. But like if you're not balancing it, it's kind of pointless. And so my gut was way off. I was like bloated. I couldn't drink beers like without feeling sick. Like I went there because of depression, but like I came out with a better overall health because the gut mind connection is so interconnected. Focusing finally more on nutrition and like feeding my body more things that actually keep it healthier.
No, I love it, man. And do you feel so? How about, could you maybe speak more about what brought you to a point of saying, hey, you know what, like however I am living, or, you know, however I was doing things isn't working. And this is like a necessary time for change. Because I think that's a crucial period. And it's a very difficult point, I think, for a lot of people to get past. Because I think some, you know, if folks internally, men and women, you know, whomever, I feel like are most people want to do better in some form. Right. And I think like crossing over that threshold of like making that mental decision of I'm going to commit to this can be a pretty steep hurdle, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So how do you feel like, you know, you got to that point maybe and then like started to even do that kind of work for yourself?
Yeah, it's in short, people being short-sighted. It's just like when that motivation drops or the task feels too heavy. Like you just choose what's easiest
Yeah.
and pass up on what you actually want. And to be able to have that vision is hard to do by yourself. Like the reason for everything, I think, circulates around how we do things collectively. Like to try and go after goals by yourself, you absolutely can. But you want to know how you do it better? You say, hey, I'm trying to do this. If I put that out in the world to somebody I care about and ask them to hold me accountable, like I have twice the ability to actually maybe pull that off. And so I think it's surrounding yourself with the right people and also taking that leap and taking, I think the most important step is to do that by doing it with somebody else and putting that out there. Cause like for me, our coaching goes a lot around like you have access to all these different dimensions of wellness. You're not told you got to do any of them, but like I hear a lot of talk about all the ones they want to do. It takes a long time till they actually come to that point where they know the step they need to do is to actually say, hey, I want to do this. Can you help hold me accountable?
Yeah.
Will I see you at the gym? Hey, can you line me up with this person? This has been my obstacle.
So is that what you kind of created for yourself? I would say even in like your own personal group or your own personal healing, did you just kind of do that through like family members, relationships, or how do you feel like
I think a lot was with the spouse. I think a lot was with a few close friends, and just like being able to see people who also wanted to do that with you, or at least be excited for you and see you enough that they can check in on that. And not like micromanaging, but like,
sure.
You know, there are some of those things that you just want to be able to see them at the gym. Like it's so hard to go to the gym when you don't got anybody there waiting for you, you know, it's going to be good for you, but you pass on it so often. Yeah. And it's like, you name the activity, it's just harder to do. Also getting over some of those obstacles was like, I'm not going to do yoga. Like I'm going to go to the studio and who's got 60 minutes and the commute and the price. I've just found ways that technologically you can get around it. Like just find a way. I'm cheap. I'm scrappy. There's the way I've been able to get into yoga is actually this amazing app called Down Dog or Downward Dog. They've got this perfectly customizable by like any amount of minutes you want to use. What kind of stretches?
Check that out,
dude. It's so good.
I've been getting into it a little bit more myself, and I've got a lot of benefit out of it too. In terms of bringing myself more into my body, realizing where tension points are and stuff. Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So I'll switch gears a little bit, but not too much. So when I say like how men cry, or I talk about how men cry, I really mean that it is it's more than just physical tears. Sometimes, it can be crying out and means of harm. It can be crying out in means of, depression or, seeking help in unhealthy ways, whatever it is. So if you feel comfortable, you want to share a story maybe of a time that either you cried or maybe felt that you had to cry out for attention, whatever it might be. Anywhere in that type of realm. Regular physical tears are fine too. I just try to open up the door in case.
I mean, I knew this question was coming, and I was spending some time thinking about how I would answer that or what story I would choose. But I think I'm feeling drawn to notice in myself the times that I didn't. Like the times when I should have and I wasn't. And I think I had a breaking point. It was my first year doing the collective. I didn't understand the idea of like shared trauma. Like when you go in with people on that stuff and people, oh my God, like the stakes are super high and the pressure's on and the hurt and the experience that you're shouldering together is just weighty, and you're doing that for multiple people. And if you're not taking care of yourself in all those different ways, I was realizing this thing called like the window of tolerance. People have talked about it in a few different ways, but the way that I've come to understand it is, at least in my life, is how when you start to feel bad or like things are going horrible and you just kind of shut down, I have to still function. I don't just like shut off. I have a lot of things to do, but I shut my emotions off. So my window of tolerance goes from being able to feel the lows and feel the highs to being like, I'm going to cut off the lows so I can just kind of get by.
Yeah.
I thought that's just like how it would work, but it takes the highs down too. So I was just stagnant. I was just like monotone life, and I was just coasting, and I couldn't feel my emotions. I couldn't. And that's what I do. It was like, and on the ride we did this weekend, the instructor was like, don't leave yourself. I was like, that's what I do every damn time. Like when I'm struggling, like talk about isolating physically. I usually can't because I'm leading a lot of things, but emotionally I'm isolated. Like I'm out there on my own. I've left myself. Like I will just not show up. Like, I'm not there. Like if you don't ask and pry it out of me, I will be alone in that feeling or the lack thereof for ages until something breaks me.
Yeah.
And so that's what I realized in that first year when it was at its peak, and the time that I didn't cry. And there was a lot of reasons I just like couldn't feel joy, excitement, anticipation, nothing. Wow. And I'm talking to a lot of leaders even last week that like when we talk real like about what the healthy things that they are, they're like, oh wait, not feeling excitement or these emotions or like any of these highs, like you're supposed to feel those these days still. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, you're leading a giant organization. Like,
but you know what? It's funny. That's actually interesting that you say that, because I think as you articulated, I know that I've gotten to that point too. Cause I've realized, I think we got, it was when like NPR, like wrote up an article about something we had done or whatever, one of our performances or something. And I recall in that time, I was so in that kind of like busy state and got to do this and business mode, blah, blah, blah. And I just remember that exactly what you said. I didn't feel anything.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of
such a high moment too. Like NPR, NBD.
Yeah. Like that was, but that was a scarier moment, you know, I think, because I was like, damn, like what is actually going on where it's flat? Like that's almost worse. Yeah. But it is worse.
It is worse
than any of the high or low. Cause then you're like, yo, what the fuck is happening? So yeah, I appreciate you saying that too.
Yeah.
So do you feel like you've figured out ways to maybe try to avoid or you know, deal with not being in that space so you have the range better?
It's definitely forced a focus on it and a value, like it's innately recreated the value of emotions. Like when I feel myself checking out when someone's going through something or seeing it myself and I'm isolated, I'm like, shit, I'm on a fast track to you know, like it's just flatlining. Like it's literally like dying in real life with your emotions. Like you're just stuck. You're flatlined. It's like after going through that and coming out, and I could share what that kind of looked like, but like going forward now and still in this work and taking on probably more people that'll be coaching and more work and managing more stress and money to keep this whole thing running. It's going to be absolutely focused on being able to be healthy enough to ride those waves, to open up my window of tolerance. Cause it's not that scary to feel the sad things. It's hard and it hurts. And like, I have a big heart and I'm compassionate. And I think that's why I'm so quick to shut it off. Cause it hurts a lot. But I know why it's important because I fucking hate flatline life. Like it's just, it's not worth it.
I mean, so what do you do to get out of it?
Dude, I don't know what kind of faith or what kind of patience, but it's just like, there's no formula to it. So in my first year, I was just in it, and it was past the winter, it'd been summertime. And that's usually when I'm like, things are good. Everything's going great. And I just wasn't coming out of it. Like I was deep in this dark place of flatline life. And it was like a year into my marriage, and like she saw it, and I went from like this high capacity, energetic, walking 15 miles around, just like in my own apartment on phone calls, to being like barely able to get out of bed. Yeah. There wasn't like this big defining moment. Like it's never this, I mean, the thing that'll spiral you into that loss right away is loss itself, like losing something or someone you care about. Yeah. But if you're just not in tune with your emotions, short of that, like it was just a subtle creeping death that was encroaching and eventually took over. And to get out of it, I just had to be like resilient and patient and hopeful. There's no hope. There's just hanging in there. Like there's not really hope.
No, I know. I'm telling you, I know. I really, I can resonate with that.
It just feels like it's going to be forever, and there is no end date, and it doesn't make any sense. And what I was doing at that time, even building this like holistic set of resources and doing all those things and trying to exemplify what it looked like to be healthy, and be a year into counseling at that time, pretty close to, and like trying to eat better and supplements and better sleep and exercise.
Just kind of inching your way up.
Yeah, gradually. I was trying to chip away at it, and it's still just like it wasn't changing anything, unfortunately. Like I wish. I'm sure that's very disheartening.
I mean, but it's real. It's stuff that needs to be heard and said.
Yeah,
honestly.
Yeah, because sometimes like even the science doesn't make sense. Like when those neurotransmitters just aren't firing, it's a battle. And I think though I love the holistic approach, I've been on both sides. I didn't take any antidepressants. Hell, it took me 4 years to even tell anybody that I had depression or like even experienced sadness or would cut or want to be near the end of life. Like no one knew. I just put a smile on my face. I made it do, like I made it work. But like now I never took any antidepressants until honestly, and I haven't shared this probably with any of my close people still. There's like shame around it right now is just
and
recently.
There isn't, man, by the way. There's literally none. At least not here.
Yeah. And I think getting to do all those different things and taking care of myself was like, you know what? Sometimes you just need a little neurotransmitter booster. And that's what a friend told me. And I was like, man, you know what? Like I gotta check that out.
Yeah.
And did some homework and found some stuff that wasn't super intrusive. And it slowly started to creep back over a few months to like a place where I could get out of bed. I had the energy to even care.
Yeah.
Because if you don't even have the energy to care, how do you even have energy for your mental health and care? Like to even like fight to get to a mental place where you even care enough to fight for getting better.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing it. And honestly, I've gone back and forth with those conversations with my therapist and stuff like that too. And actually, one of my good friends was saying kind of a similar situation where she's gone through or had so many traumatic experiences happen in life, and she's balanced and has done all the things right, and she's checking all the boxes and blah blah blah. She's like, but the feeling and situation was the same. She's like, and it was so persistent, and she kind of landed on the same conclusion, where she's just like, at some point in time, it's just it can make more sense. And I think removing even just the shame around that, because it's just another form of help or just another form of essentially you're trying to care or get to the best state of yourself, man. So like I said, I appreciate you sharing all of that. It's a lot of context, but I think this is the stuff that is important for folk because like, especially, and I want to stress this too, just like coming out of a lot of what we've been coming out of, the world is very loud right now, can feel very isolating. So I appreciate you going into it all, honestly, because it helps even me personally beyond any of this stuff.
Yeah.
So let me ask, so I have a couple more for you. And this one, I think I'm really curious about your response for this in particular. What do you feel like the world could use more of from men? Yeah, I'm asking easy ass questions if you haven't figured that out.
Super easy. It always comes back to community. Like guys together need to actually there's a fair amount of guys hanging out, but I think we need to up the quality.
Yeah.
Like create space, understand how to just delve into a little bit more, like make space for sharing how you're doing or checking in on your person. And like, not just taking like, I'm good for an answer, like always pry more, ask better questions, like give a damn. Like just don't take the answer you're usually giving because we're always giving the short answer. Like for me personally, like you gotta dig to get to me. Like Carrie's still trying to figure, my spouse is still trying to figure out how to like go deeper because like I'm gonna throw up a couple, like you might throw a couple punches. I'll just be like, I'm good, and then I leave. And you're like, no, I want to get deeper. Like let's get into this thing. And I'm just like, nope, peace out. Like I already know kind of how I'm doing. So like I just want to know about you. That's like a reflective mechanism. It's like, oh, you're such a good guy. You like look out for other people. It's like, no, you just don't want to like unearth maybe what's going on, or be vulnerable like that.
I made one joke, which is true, but also untrue. I was like, I'm glad that How Men Cry can take a little bit of pressure off of me so I can ask other people about stuff. I am also willing to answer these things. I think I'm going to do some kind of mirror, some kind of mirror interview around it. But no, I appreciate you going into that as well. And I think you're absolutely right. And I've been able to see that, I have to thank you for that as a friend, or, just in general, because you do that in like action. I see it how you show up for guys, and even the circles that you've created, or that we've kind of created around us. I agree.
Yeah.
So now to flip the question a bit.
Also, one more thing. Don't be afraid to say I love you and compliment people. For frick's sake. Like, let's go.
Yeah. No, yeah, seriously. And that's like it's so funny how taboo that can be amongst men in general.
The word I love you and vulnerability probably are like the most coinciding things, where you're feeling like, oh, I don't know. It's true though. Yeah. Like, you kind of feel like, are we at that level? Do you not like me like that? Like, will that make you uncomfortable?
No, it's real.
But like, when you hear it, there's a funny TikTok where these guys are like talking, they're just bro hanging, and he leaves the table, heads towards the door, and he's like, I love you. He's like, what'd you say? And they share that moment, and he walks out. He's all cool. He's like, yeah, I love you too, man. He closes the door, and you could see through the window as he walks by. He's like, I love you always forever. And he's like dancing, and he's on like cloud nine. But that's kind of how you feel. Like, like we're at that point where I can trust you. Like, I think it creates this level of trust. But you got to be the first one to kind of go out there. And so to do that, one, is really important. It does set a tone. But then also how you encourage people.
Yeah.
I think a lot of guys got the ego around, if I encourage you, then that takes something away from me. And I feel that sometimes, even recently, like when I'm not in tune or not feeling confident, I just don't have much more to give. But if you do have it, and you got that idea or you thought about someone, like, just share it.
Yeah.
Share
love
it.
You,
It brings more good into the world, man.
Oh, you're gonna say it back? You gotta fucking say it back. I was about to say it, damn it.
I didn't hear you.
I was like, you better say it back. Like, you can't leave me out here.
I'm blessed. I'd be like, remember that one time? I didn't say it on air.
No. This is ridiculous. No, but so then I'll flip this question, because I think this one is pretty fascinating too, which is like, so what do you think men could use from the world to get closer, to be able to display a lot of those things?
Use from the world?
And this one's tricky, because I know that men take a lot from the world. People hate when I flip this question, so I'm not really saying it in a way of men deserve. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, what do you think we could use more of to make it a little bit easier to get to some of those points?
Like in culture?
I don't know. However you want to take it. I just ask a question. That's all I do.
Give me one. This is where we get to flip it.
Okay.
One for you.
All right.
And
okay.
I'll
Fine.
go.
Okay. I would say I think platforms are really important for guys to be able to communicate about a lot of these things, because this is what I'll say. I've found that a lot of guys feel isolated in their ability to even talk about like deeper topics like this sometimes. And I think like it gets, if you already feel isolated in your personal space, or you feel isolated in, say work, to not be able to really let out who you are. Maybe you feel isolated in relationships, etc. And then I think there's like narrative sometimes where guys can feel isolated about sharing their opinions within the world. I think that is like kind of a recipe for disaster in terms of the mental health space for guys. So even motivation behind this project is like to provide just enough of an open platform of just discussion, where I try to bring in, everybody's biased, whatever else, but I try to bring in no judgment, and just let guys talk, because I think it's just necessary.
Mhm.
So I don't know. You can just say I agree, and that can be your answer. But
No, I mean, creating space is a lot of what you're talking about.
yeah. So there you go. Yeah.
And I think, I mean, whether it's how we built the version of housing that we've created or my dreams for the next phase, like it's all around meeting people where they're at. And I think sometimes people could be, I mean, I see it even as a way like, what's the shock value of how men cry? Like, I'm not gonna voluntarily go to that damn meeting. Like, no freaking way. Like,
Yeah,
we might be leading, we know it's helpful, but like, dude, we barely can get our guys to go to counseling. Like, it's a journey. So, like, to meet people where they're at and create space, so important.
Yeah.
And like, you got to come to other people, but you also just need to be present and proximate, which I think just people, it's hard to know where to go, and it's also hard to keep showing up. I really think it is. Like, we just get so busy. It's like, how do we know that that's important to us? And I think that, like, being able to, like, I've gained so much from the people that are older than me that have, like, kind of taken me under the wing, or I've gone and sought out.
Yeah.
And it's like guys like that guy who's talking about, you know, there's not a lot you can do about your own, but there's a lot you can do about others. Like, these guys are just like, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't understand that type of compassion and movement and how that can play out in action. And it's like, you need this idea of this next year for the collective too looks like social capital, and being able to make space for people is also surrounding yourself or getting surrounded. You know, like, that's kind of our work, is like, people just don't voluntarily surround themselves when they're feeling isolated, but to be present and proximate in these spaces and to be exemplary and worth looking up to, like that, just relationship and space that you make in that time over time and consistency. Like, no one's going to come out from day one usually and talk about how they're doing.
Yeah.
But if you are there enough or around or familiar, like, there's going to come a time. And when we go through what we go through, we can see it in people's eyes, where they're at and what's going on.
Absolutely.
And that's usually why we end up with a bunch of different people that are going through stuff. But like, that's the beauty of it. Like, we help one another carry those burdens. And like, similar to that Swedish proverb I mentioned last week, is just like, a shared burden is half the burden. Shared joy is double the joy. Like, we're dividing pain when we share it. We are taking the load off. Like, we're not putting it on someone, which I think is oftentimes to delineate those two things. I guess I haven't thought of it that way, but like, I'm always thinking, oh, I don't want to put that on them. They're already going through enough. That's how I grew up.
Yeah.
Like,
probably same.
put that away. Realize that, like, you're sharing is getting to divide that. And it is a gift. Like, when someone does that with you and you receive that and you're like, oh man, I'm so glad you would share that with me. Like, I'm sorry you're going through it. And it feels heavy. And you feel like the world's like shit sometimes, but damn it, you're not carrying it alone. When you're carrying it alone, it's so heavy.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No,
and you get to divide it and divide it and divide it. And when more people are looking around you and proximate to you that care about you, you just are able to go through it, better.
Yeah.
More healthy.
Yeah. I love that, man. I really do. Man. It's great. Really great input. I appreciate everything that you shared today, man. I really, really, again, I'm inspired by the work that you do all the time and just everything you're doing out there. So proud of you for that. I want to tell you that directly and on camera, so you can, blackmail me later about it. But
that time I told you I don't love you.
I know. I said it first. Then I
didn't hear you. I swear. I swear I love you.
I love you too, man. For real. We got to be, and I think you are right about that though, man. Because like, seriously, God, that's like, I don't know why that can be so taboo. But no, I just want to thank you again for, spending the time coming on the podcast and just chatting through everything. Any places you want to leave where people can, find you, or sites you want to send them to, or anything?
Sure. Yeah. Check out collective_Chicago, Facebook, Instagram. I do a terrible job at updates, but sometimes I'll throw a story up and see behind the scenes. It's a hard thing to do, when you're protecting the identity of young guys that are still trying to arrive. And so oftentimes the graduates leave and I get the one-on-one conversations, but I don't usually share that. And so just to hear what we're doing, a little bit of how we function, collectivechicago.org to don't get excited for a ton of updates, but I'm working on it, and that's where the passion project resides.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Dan. And thank you all listeners for just tuning in to another episode of How Men Cry. You can always find out more at howmencry.com, How Men Cry on Instagram, and just really, really rich conversation today, man. So just thank you for all of it. And also thank you for throwing hands. We will have to do it again. Maybe we'll get Mike out here too, have him throwing some hands.
Yeah, and then we'll go. You got 2 sets of gloves?
I do.
All right, I don't want to box you. I'll box the new guy. I'll take Mike on.
But no, I appreciate you, and tune in for the next episodes. I have no idea what number this episode will be. I'll say that in full transparency. He was mad that I'm not even gonna tell you when. Just forget it. Anyway,
just happy to be here.
Thank you guys, and tune in next time.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, a long way from a stuttering kid. I didn't